Okay, we'll start with this. The rescheduled WBC Super Bantamweight title fight between the reigning champion of Mexico, Jamie Mercado, and the challenger, Zulina Muñoz, has been moved to April 2nd, early next month. Initially, it was supposed to go down on the 19th of this month, but the fight date was moved.
I still like Jamie Mercado to win the fight.
Both fighters are coming off of losses. The reigning champion, Jamie Mercado, very recently went up to featherweight, lost the last fight to Amanda Serrano.
Zulina Muñoz traveled to Denmark and lost her last fight to Dina Thorsland.
Although Zulina Muñoz, unlike Jamie Mercado, she was stopped in her last fight, dropped 2 times at the hands of the Bantamweight division's reigning WBO champion. This fight, this ain't going to be a Bantamweight contest, it's a Super Bantamweight contest up there at 122 pounds.
Perhaps a better weight for Zulina Muñoz?
Zulina is about 10 years older than Jamie Mercado. Zulina's 34 years old, whereas Jamie, the reigning champion, she's 24, 10 years younger than Zulina. One way to look at it is that the reigning champion isn't as experienced as the challenger, and yet another way to look at it is she's not as war-torn.
Zulina's a veteran of 59 pro fights, 59 professional contests.
Whereas Jamie's only had 21 pro fights. 21 pro fights to Zulina Muñoz is 59.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that Jamie Mercado at this point is more durable than Zulina.
Jamie Mercado, in spite of being this division's reigning WBC champion, is still very rough around the edges, very crude. There's more work needs doing, but as far as durability, I have to give that edge to Jamie Mercado. Jamie, who very recently traveled up to featherweight and went the distance with one of the
strongest pound-for-pound punches in the entire sport, Amanda Serrano.
I don't think Zulina Muñoz has the defense or the durability to go 10 rounds with an Amanda Serrano, but Jamie Mercado, at minimum, in that fight with Amanda, she showed a good chin, a lot of heart.
She didn't get stopped.
Zulina, she's got a hefty knockout record, she does, but I don't think she's as strong a puncher as Amanda Serrano. That being said, I think Jamie Mercado has the kind of durability to where she'll finish the fight on her feet. I think she's going to win the fight.
I think she might stop Zulina Muñoz.
Zulina, who does have a lot of knockouts, the same way that Amanda Serrano has a lot of knockouts, with the difference being that Zulina spent a lot of time down there at super flyweight, 115 pounds, whereas this is a 122-pound contest. I think at this weight, Jamie Mercado might actually be the stronger and more durable fighter.
Drawback is that Jamie gets hit too much.
In the past, she has been a get one to give one, come forward kind of fighter. I expect that's the kind of fighter that's going to show up in early April next month when these two share the ring. Zulina Muñoz, being as experienced as she is, at 34 years old, you wonder if she's not on the back nine of those 59 professional bouts, 59 professional contests that might now be bearing down upon her, the weight of them. I don't think Zulina Muñoz's punch resistance is what it used to be. She was stopped not that long ago by Mayeli Flores, more recently stopped by Dina Thorsland. Will Jamie Mercado on April 2nd be the next fighter to stop Zulina Muñoz?
There's reason to believe she might.
Jamie Mercado has to take this fight seriously because titles are changing hands in unexpected places. Very recently, light flyweight WBA champion of Argentina, Jessica Bob. She lost her WBA title to Mexico's own Jessica Neri Plata. More recently, Ana E. Lopez of Argentina. She lost her WBO title to Tamara DeMarco.
Jamie's got to take this fight seriously.
The sport of boxing is often dubbed the theater of the unexpected, and unexpected things, they have been happening. Look for this, April 2nd, south of the border. Women's lightweight news ahead of what is to be the Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano showdown, April 30th. Katie Taylor says, if you'd go down the list of fighters we've faced, you'll recognize more names on my resume.
And how many times have I told you guys that here on this channel?
Katie Taylor really acknowledges the difficult task she faces in her upcoming pound-for-pound showdown with Amanda Serrano on April 30th at Madison Square Garden in New York City. There's also the belief that years of experience at the top level have prepared her for this very moment. We're both champions. She has a great record. There's no doubt about it, Taylor said. She's a great fighter. We're both going to be stepping into the ring fight night believing we're going to come out victorious. One thing about it is, if you go down the list of fighters we've faced, you will recognize more names on my resume.
That's just cold hard truth.
It is a statistical fact. that Katie Taylor has taken away more belts from more active reigning champions, not to be confused with former champions, fighters that held a belt but perhaps didn't have one when they fought Amanda Serrano. Katie Taylor has taken away more belts from more champions than Amanda has, even though Amanda's been around for years. She debuted as a professional in 2009, whereas Katie didn't go pro till 2016.
Yet Katie's taken more belts from more champions, more than Amanda.
Amanda's only actually ever fought 2 active reigning world champions and taken their belts from them. Maria Maderna, many years ago in the lightweight division, she took her belt. She took Heather Hardy's belt as well, the WBO title at featherweight. But the rest of the titles that Amanda won were vacant titles that no one was holding. And that's not saying that Amanda's a bad fighter, but what that is saying is that oftentimes her road to these world titles that she's won throughout 7 weight classes, well, it didn't have as much resistance as the path that Katie was on, because every belt Katie won, she pried away from a reigning world champion.
Whereas with vacant titles, it's a little easier to win a belt that nobody's holding.
Yeah, sometimes it is. That's the truth, and you can make of that what you will. If you still like Amanda's chances against Katie, that's your prerogative. Though it is a matter of fact that Katie Taylor has pried away more belts from more reigning world champions, and comparatively, in spite of having debuted as a professional many years after Amanda debuted as a professional, in spite of that, Katie Taylor has fought the more formidable fighters and the more familiar names. Some of those victories have aged very well, like her victory over Jessica McCaskill many years ago, who went on after that loss to become a 2-division undisputed champion.
She fought Delphine Persoon 2 times.
And yet Delphine Persoon has been around just about as long as Amanda, but somehow Amanda never bumped into her, whereas Katie took her on twice. And to this day, nobody's in a hurry to take on Delphine Persoon.
But Katie took her on 2 times.
Just last year, Katie Taylor took on hard-punching southpaw Ms. Great Britain, Natasha Jonas, who this year saw herself become a world champion in the junior middleweight division. When Katie Taylor says that if you run down their resumes, she's fought more familiar faces, more familiar fighters, she's telling the truth.
There's a lot less filler in Katie's resume than what you see in Amanda's.
You can make of that what you will, but Katie's not lying when she says that. She's telling the truth.
So if you like Amanda's chances, you like Amanda's chances.
Place your bets and pick who you like for whatever reason you like them. For some, it's as simple as what flag the fighters fly. There's a lot of nationalism, a lot of tribalism involved. But if that's good enough...
If that's enough for you to make a decision, then make your decision.
Though from where I'm sitting, because Katie has competed against these kinds of solid fighters and familiar faces more often than Amanda Serrano has, in spite of Katie debuting many years after Amanda debuted, in spite of this, having fought these kinds of fighters more consistently over time, I feel like it has prepared Katie.
Katie's used to fighting on bigger stages than Amanda.
We'll see what that's worth, April 30th. In other news, Luis Ortiz has recovered from surgery, and now he'd like to face Anthony Joshua.
Oh, so he recovered right after Hrgovic's next fight was announced.
It's convenient, very convenient. As soon as Hrgovic's got a fight on the books, here comes Luis Ortiz, and he wants to be fast-tracked to Anthony Joshua. Back in early January, former title challenger Luis King Kong Ortiz was ordered by the IBF to face Filip Hrgovic in a heavyweight final eliminator. The winner would have become IBF, WBA, WBO, IBO champion Oleksandr Usyk's mandatory challenger. Ortiz was in action January 1st when he got off the canvas twice to stop Charles Martin in 6 rounds. According to his manager, Jay Jimenez, he also suffered a hand fracture that prevented him from accepting the fight against Hrgovic. The hand injury has now healed, and Ortiz is now able to resume training.
Is healed. He has been saved.
King Kong Ortiz is back. I'm starting training next week. My rehabilitation of the hand injury is done. I'm ready for anyone, including Hrgovic.
Oh, you mean now that he's got a fight booked, you're ready for him?
He's supposed to be boxing Zhilei Zhang on the undercard of Canelo versus Bivol in what is an IBF final eliminator. And now that he's got a fight booked, now is when Luis Ortiz is ready for him. He added, if not him, then any of the top contenders. I heard rumors of Joshua looking for southpaw work. I would be honored to step in for his interim bout while he waits for Usyk as he defends his beautiful country. My prayers go out to the Klitschko brothers and all the Ukrainian people.
I'm not against that fight.
If they want to make Luis Ortiz an offer, let him make Luis Ortiz an offer. Though I happen to think the scalp of Otto Wallin means a little more in 2022 than the scalp of the twice knocked out Luis Ortiz, the twice knocked down in his last fight Luis Ortiz, who had to pick himself up off the deck 2 times just to dispatch Charles Martin.
Guy's over 40 years old.
Luis Ortiz is 42 years old. 42 years old. He's 10 years older than Otto Wallin. Otto Wallin, he's never been stopped, and he actually went the distance with Tyson Fury, whereas Luis Ortiz, he's been stopped already 2 times.
Already been stopped 2 times by Deontay Wilder, who was stopped 2 times by Tyson Fury, who couldn't stop Otto Wallin.
Yeah, I think stopping Otto Wallin in 2022 means more than potentially stopping Luis Ortiz.
Pardon me for saying so.
Not that it really matters, because Michael Benson's been told by Eddie Hearn that Eddie expects Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz to happen next. This is the impression he's received after talks with Luis de Cubas, who works with Al Heyman, in which he tried to make a Ruiz versus Derek Chisora fight.
Is anybody surprised?
Was anybody expecting Anthony Joshua versus Luis Ortiz or Derek Chisora versus Andy Ruiz Jr.? Because I wasn't. I will admit, commercially, Chisora versus Ruiz might do better business in the UK than Ortiz versus Ruiz would in the USA. But we all know how they do things on PBC Island.
I wasn't expecting Andy to get on a plane to fight Derek Chisora.
This is what I was expecting. This is what I was expecting the whole time. Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz in what could be billed as a Fox PBC pay-per-view.
Some things, they're very predictable, but some things aren't.
Per tweet from Mike Coppinger via his sources, Alexander Usyk has received permission from the Ukrainian sports minister to leave the country during war and will begin training camp for a summer rematch with Anthony Joshua for the Unified Heavyweight Championship, sources tell ESPN. Story coming. Yeah, that's the story according to Mike Coppinger, but according to Aegis Climax, who was responding to Mike Coppinger's tweet, he says, "You motherfuckers need to stop posting fake news about my fighters. I'm telling you, stay away from all of my fighters."
That's not the first time somebody came at Mike Coppinger's head for something he tweeted.
Something he posted or a story he broke. Not that long ago, it was Mike Coppinger that stated Canelo Alvarez was going to go with DAZN and Matchroom for his next fight. He was going to take them up on their 2-fight deal. And it was Team Canelo.
Canelo Alvarez responded to him personally then the way Aegis Climax is responding to him personally now.
So does Mike Coppinger's version of the story, does that story check out? And in breaking that news, did he hit a nerve? Enough of a nerve that Aegis Climax, I don't know, maybe he wanted this to stay under wraps.
Time proved Mike Coppinger right in the past.
When he initially broke that news that Canelo Alvarez was going to accept Matchroom and DAZN's 2-fight deal, he got a lot of flack for it. Got a lot of flack from Canelo and Canelo Alvarez's supporters. But Rick Glacier, boxing insider Rick Glacier, he stated, time is going to prove Mike Coppinger right, and he will be vindicated. Is that the situation here when it comes to Alexander Usyk and potentially leaving the Ukraine to have that rematch with Anthony Joshua? That's the question. I don't know.
Mike's information ended up checking out when it came to Canelo. Will his information end up checking out when it comes to Usyk?
Been proven right before, though at this time, boxing scribe Michael Benson, he's been told by Eddie Hearn that Eddie is now once again unsure whether or not Alexander Usyk will take the Anthony Joshua rematch next. In recent days, he said he was expecting Usyk to do so, but after Vasyl Lomachenko decided to stay in the Ukraine, he now thinks Usyk might do the same.
That's a genuine possibility we've talked about here on the channel.
Their home country is under attack. Cities are being razed to the ground. What would it do for the crew morale if 2 of their more notoriable guys...
What's it gonna do to the crew morale if they see one of their guys leave the country to go box and make millions of dollars?
It's an honest question, a legitimate one. If Vasyl Lomachenko was offered the opportunity to leave the country and go to Australia to box George Kambosos, but he decided to stay in the Ukraine, what's to say that Usyk don't make the same decision?
Though at the same time, Mike Coppinger broke this story.
And Mike Coppinger's been right in the past, even at times where people were telling you to dismiss his information, that it's all false and it's all fake news. He has been vindicated in the past. Will he be vindicated when it comes to this? I'll tell you what I think. And if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do. I think that Anthony Joshua stands a better chance of beating a Joe Joyce or an Otto Wallin than he does of beating Usyk in a rematch. I think that should Usyk decide to stay in Ukraine for the duration of the war, that might give Anthony Joshua a better chance of seeing himself becoming a champion again, in spite of Usyk currently being this division's unified champion, holding 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight. If he decides to stay in Ukraine for the duration of the war, well, we don't know how long this war is going to last, and at some point, the alphabet organizations, the sanctioning bodies, they may label him a champion in recess.
At which point those 3 world titles could could go vacant.
Think about the guys that are in pole positions to challenge for those alphabet titles very soon. Think about Daniel Dubois and Trevor Bryan. I'd give Anthony Joshua very good odds to beat either of those guys. Think about Joe Joyce by way of the WBO. I'd give Anthony Joshua good odds to beat Joe Joyce, at least better odds than I'd give him to beat Usyk in a rematch.
Think about the winner of Philippe Pergovic versus Zhilei Zhang.
I think Philippe Pergovic is going to put Zhilei Zhang in the hospital. That's what I think. And if Philippe Pergovic emerges the winner in that IBF final eliminator, I give Anthony Joshua decent odds to beat Philippe Pergovic because none of those guys are as proven at this level as Anthony Joshua is. Oftentimes, I think Anthony Joshua doesn't get credit for the resume that he's amassed. I mean, think about it. In Luis Ortiz's last fight, he got sat on his back pocket 2 times by Charles Martin. This is a guy who Anthony Joshua beat years ago, back when Charles Martin was an unbeaten IBF champion. He beat that guy easy, whereas today's Charles Martin, he's got enough left in the tank to put Luis Ortiz on his back pocket.
This guy's struggling to put away Charles Martin?
Charles Martin put up a decent-sized fight before he got stopped by Luis Ortiz, whereas years ago he wasn't able to put up much of a fight at all against Anthony Joshua. Oftentimes, I think Anthony Joshua doesn't get the credit he deserves for the resume he's amassed and the level at which he's been competing for years.
Don't give me the crap about Joe Joyce.
I got nothing against smoking Joe Joyce, and I got nothing against that fight, but you're kidding yourself if you think that Anthony Joshua is afraid of that guy.
Come on, the best guy he's taken out is Daniel Dubois, a prospect.
I'm not writing him off. I'm just saying that this is a guy who couldn't stay out of the way of Bryant Jennings' right hand. This is a guy who struggled with Carlos Takam years after Anthony Joshua fought that same Carlos Takam.
I don't think Anthony Joshua gets credit for any of this stuff.
He's one of these guys to where, because he's so successful, there are a lot of people out there that resent him for it, and tearing him down is the new and trendy thing to do. But I'll tell you right now, if Usyk don't come back for this rematch and he decides to stay in the Ukraine, I'd give Anthony Joshua decent odds to beat any of these world title challengers that are lining up. Philippe Pergovic, Joe Joyce, Trevor Bryan, Daniel Dubois.
You're telling me he can't beat those
He
guys?
stands no chance. No chance of beating those guys. I don't believe that.
Still the biggest name in the heavyweight division.
Do you think Tyson Fury would do the numbers that Anthony Joshua did with a guy like Carlos Takam?
Do you?
With a guy like Alexander Povetkin?
Do you?
Oh, the Dillian White fight. Those tickets are selling like hotcakes, and that has nothing to do with Dillian White, guy who's established himself as a pay-per-view draw, sold out the O2 Arena in recent years. It's got nothing to do with him.
Anthony Joshua's the biggest name in heavyweight boxing.
People resent him for it, and that's why he doesn't get any credit for what he's done thus far. What do you think Joe Joyce meant when he said that Anthony Joshua was handed everything?
Back when those two boys were trading barbs.
I'll tell you right now, if Usyk remains in the Ukraine for the duration of this war, and it's Anthony Joshua versus the rest of the best, the rest of these guys, I give Anthony Joshua very good odds to become a 3-time heavyweight champion.